Hello, everyone. This is Yuri, aka the Yakyu Cosmopolitan, and today I am here with Brandon Tu, operations analyst at SIS Baseball. I had Brandon on earlier in the offseason, obviously, to talk about the Japanese pitchers going to MLB. And everyone we discussed in that podcast did actually end up joining an MLB team, whether it be, on a major league or minor league deal. So, best of luck to them for the 2025 season. This time around, though, our discussion is going to revolve around some of the best starters in MPB currently. And I want to know how much we agree or disagree on my rankings, kind of. But first, how's it going, Brandon? And are you ready for the new baseball season?
Yeah, it's going well. Doing great. Yeah, I'm excited for the new season. I'm kind of already into like Division One NCAA baseball over here in the U.S. But yeah, getting ramped up for the minors and then majors and obviously MPB as well, starting to get that season kicked off. And I have a couple reports that I'm excited to get rolling out before the season starts about some of these guys, some top guys in MPB. I'm really excited to like write about those guys that are kind of staying over there and not just guys that are heading to MLB. So yeah, really exciting for me in terms of the baseball season starting. A lot of different baseball I get to watch.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of talent all over the world that obviously doesn't get talked about too much if you're, just tuned into MLB. And yeah, I mean, college baseball, this is kind of my first time actually semi-following it thanks to Rintaro Sasaki. So,
Yeah.
I think a lot of Japanese fans are also going to be kind of keeping their eyes on Stanford this season. But like I said, our topic today is the best starting pitchers in Nippon Professional Baseball for 2025. So, a few months ago, I came out with my preseason pitcher tier list. It's basically like a top 80-ish ranking. And I grouped them into tiers, but the way I did it was pretty straightforward, basically looking at their primary fastball velocity and strikeout rate minus walk rate from last year. Two very simple yet effective metrics, I think, to gauge how good a guy projects to be. Obviously, I went into some of the more specifics like the individual arsenals, the command, the stuff to kind of decide where to put guys within tiers. But that's kind of the gist of it. So first off, Brandon, I wanted to ask, like, when you don't have access to all the baseball savant type data like we do in MLB, where all that is public and you can get, the induced vertical break and the spin rates, and the pitch charts. Do you think this sort of results-based analysis is still useful? And what do you personally like the most to look at most when it comes to pitcher evaluation in MPB?
Yeah, in MPB it's a little tricky because of the dead ball or the recent dead ball stuff and just like understanding ERA and stuff like that, like results based stuff might always not tell you exactly what's going on in terms of process and how a pitcher's getting to a certain result. But at the end of the day, results matter, and what happens on the field is very important. For me, it's probably a breakdown of I love to chart guys, and I probably overwatch to an extent. Like I chart every game, I chart every pitch. I'm like making sure the pitch types on my end seem correct and match up to like what I'm getting from like certain places. So in terms of that, there's a lot of like watching and just like looking for grips and looking for how pitches move and stuff like that. And I think that's the baseline for how I start is just watching a pitcher and kind of seeing how everything blends together, how stuff moves and how I see it on video. And then going from there, taking a look at maybe like the process in like terms of maybe CSW rate or whiff
Yeah.
rate on a certain pitch. And then going from that process to then the end result and being like, okay, wow, like this pitcher had this ground ball rate, or they have this ERA or this FIP or this K minus walk percentage, as you said. That's probably one of the most predictive stats in terms of prediction of future success, K minus walk percentage, which you wouldn't really think about, but like yeah, it's very important to throw strikes and to limit walks. So yeah, that's probably my number one process is watching guys first and watching a ton of video and then going from there probably doing like CSW percentage, whiff percentage, and then K minus walk, and then actually getting into the results like FIP, Sierra if it's available. FIP minus is even like a great stat to
Yeah.
use just to like balance stuff out and adjust to the league. Cause yeah, I think that's the biggest thing too when you're watching a league like MPB, just knowing that offense is down and pitching is king, but also understanding like how guys get to certain results and processes.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying about like feeling like you might overwatch sometimes because whenever an MPB player goes to MLB and I see like someone from the MLB sphere come out with a scouting report, I always have moments where I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought of him in that way because it's like I have these
Mm-hmm.
preconceived notions of watching this guy for, years of being like, this guy fits this mold, he's not going to be anything more than that, and being like, oh, you're right. I think I had this a lot with Shota Imanaga, honestly, and obviously, like it's worked out really
Yeah.
well for him. And yeah, I mean, MPB so far in spring training, the balls are flying a little bit more. So I do have my fingers crossed for maybe a little bit more offense this year. But still, I don't think we're going to be seeing anywhere near the slug that you do in MLB. And that's fine. It's two very different styles of baseball, but it's still the same game at the end of the day. And let's actually jump right in then to the very top of my rankings, where I have Hiroya Miyagi of the Oryx Buffaloes number one and Hiroto Takahashi of the Chunichi Dragons number two. This is really a 1A and 1B type situation for me, though. Like Miyagi's teammate Shunpeita Yamashita, also very close, but in my opinion, a bit more volatile. So, just your thoughts on Miyagi versus Takahashi at the very top.
Yeah, I think it's a little 1A, 1B, as you say. I probably lean more Miyagi than Takahashi just because I think Miyagi has an array of pitches, an assortment of pitches
Yeah.
that he can throw to righties as a lefty and get results and get outs. And he has the sweeper and the fastball to lefties that he just absolutely obliterates hitters with. Whereas I think Takahashi is more relying on like velo, fastball velocity. He has a really good pitch in what I refer to as a splinker splitter. It's just a devastating pitch, and he has the curve and the slider off of it. Or we can get more into this later, but it's probably more of like a cutter and like a knuckle slider more than slider and curveball. But the idea is that like both of them probably have plus stuff, but I think Miyagi just has a little bit more in terms of dealing with the opposite handedness better than Takahashi does. I almost want Takahashi to like add another pitch, almost like maybe like a sinker at a two seam that he can like run it on the hands of right-handed batters or something like that, just to kind of give a different look, and even to lefties, just like finding a way to work against lefties. So I think Miyagi's like pitch mix and how deep it is kind of makes me lean Miyagi over Takahashi, but it's really really close. Like you said, it's 1A 1B. Probably the most talented person is Yamashita, but yeah, out of those two results based and talent wise, it's 1A 1B Miyagi Takahashi.
Yeah, part of what I think makes this such a fun kind of debate between the two is that they're so close, obviously, in terms of the talent level, but kind of polar opposite in terms of style. I mean, obviously Miyagi's a lefty, but he's more, again, like you said, wide arsenal. He's got the high spin, and I think he can just beat you in so many different ways. Whereas Takahashi, to me, pretty straightforward. Kind of the low spin, high velocity, fastball splinker, like a lot of the time, throwing a few curveballs and sliders now and then. But he's a ground ball machine, obviously. And Miyagi, you might get more swing and miss with him. The strikeout rate more in the 25% range. Takahashi was like 3% below that. But if the ball is hit, it's going on the ground 60% of the time. And coupled with the fact that he pitches at Nagoya Dome, which is the biggest pitcher's park in MPB. That's why he only gave up one home run in all of
Yeah,
MPB last season, and that was to Munetaka Murakami, who he usually dominates, by the way. Like, I mean, he strikes him out the vast majority of the time, but Murakami did clip him one time.
I was gonna say on a
Miyagi,
slider
yeah,
too, which is Murakami's like bread and butter is
yeah.
hitting like a mistake slider. So yeah, one slider that got away from him that he hit over the fence.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And Takahashi, he can be so overpowering at times, and I do think that Splinker is disgusting. I mean, it's 92% fastball Splinker against lefties, and it's a lot of that is on like the outer third of the plate as well. So again, he has like this kind of set style. Miyagi has three different pitches with a whiff rate over 30%. So I think his location is elite. I think he can dominate both hands. Pitches to the glove side a lot. Lots of fastballs against lefties. I mean, he just really pounds that thing against lefties. But he gets the job done. So I guess in terms of the results last season, Takahashi with the 1.38 ERA, Miyagi a tad below two. Takahashi was better, but do you think this season, I guess, obviously the park factor matters too, but what kind of seasons are you expecting from Miyagi and Takahashi in 2025?
Yeah, I don't know if we're gonna see the one home run given up by Takahashi again. He might get clipped a little bit more than that, but I expect both of them to have very dominant seasons. I don't really see much changing in terms of how they get to that process and how they dominate hitters. Kind of like you were saying, like the three pitches over 30% whiff rate. I mean, the sweeper is nasty. The For Miyagi, the splitter is also very good. I have 38% whiff rate, 37.9. And then he's got a couple of other pitches like the changeup is also really really good against hitters as well. So I do like the depth of the arsenal. And for me, what strikes me about Miyagi, and we can kind of get further into this just talking about him, is he definitely is like almost cross body, but he's like trying to like dot the inside like glove side corner or like glove side part of the plate with his fastball. Like he's trying to like basically hit that spot against righties or lefties. It really doesn't matter. He's just trying to like hit that spot and then work off of it. And I do think it's weird, like kind of how he throws, because he throws from like that low slot
Yeah.
and his wrist angle is like really, really weird. So I just think it gives guys like a different look, and he kind of gets the ball to tell a little bit. So he's not really like truly staying behind the ball. He's more like getting the ball to like run back over the plate from a four seam, look, while also throwing from this low slot. So if you ask me, like in terms of like what he does as a process, I just think Miyagi's ability to like throw that cross body four seam and kind of run it back over the plate and then throw the sweeper off of it is just disgusting. Like I don't know if there's a better fastball like slider mix in MPB. Maybe Imai is the other one, but they're two different looks too, because one's a gyro slider with Imai and the other one is more of like a sweeper for Miyagi. Whereas Takahashi, I think this is kind of fascinating. Depending on the handedness is like where he kind of attacks hitters. So against righties, he's more like outside edge, like
Yeah.
crossbody, and then lefties, he's kind of doing the same thing. Like he's kind of going outside edge against lefties, more like arm side. So I do think that's kind of interesting how they both like kind of work different parts of the zone in terms of how they attack handedness. And to me, I think the hardest pitch to throw for a pitcher is that crossbody like fastball, and the fact that Miyagi's basically like perfected the ability to like get around the ball and just like push that angle. To me, that makes him one of the most talented pitchers in NPB and probably the best pitcher. 1A again, as we were talking about 1A to 1B. Just I think the angles at which he throws from is just very different and very unique looks. Whereas like I think Takahashi's giving you more of like a straight up like look from his arm angle, whereas Miyagi's giving you the cross body and his wrist angle, and just the
Yeah.
way he kind of attacks the plate horizontally is very different from a lot of different guys.
Yeah, I definitely think his attack angles help the velocity play up because he's more 91, 92, can run it up to
Yeah,
like 94 at times. And his velocity has increased little by little every single season. So I do think we can see another jump this year. It's interesting you brought up Tatsuya Imai because I believe if you mirror or like invert Miyagi, he has almost one for one mechanics with Tatsuya Imai. It's just, one
mm,
from the right side, one from the left side. So it's very interesting. I mean, they're both kind of the heavy on fastballs and sliders as well. So and we'll get more into Imai later, but I think in MPB where so many pitchers are so heavy on splitters as kind of the big weapon,
yeah,
Miyagi having, I mean, he has a splitter too, but having the slider, the big breaking ball can really help him. And how about his teammate Shunpeita Yamashita? Let's touch on him
yeah,
because I think without Roki Sasaki in the league, Yamashita is easily the most talented pitcher. I mean, in terms of like future ceiling in Major League Baseball, for instance, 96 to 98 on the fastball. He's touched 100. He does have these like lingering back issues, which is always a little bit scary, but he's healthy right now and he's pitching in spring. I saw him throw against a KBO team last week, and he looked electric as always. He climbs the ladder with that four seamer. Early last year, he really struggled with the command. He was like behind the count all the time, kind of like Blake Snell's early season struggles in 2024, where it's just like he's behind the count so much, and then he's forced to come in the zone,
Yeah,
and they just kind of sit on him, and then he was getting crushed at times, had to get sent down to the farm to work on some things, but got called back up, and his last 2 months were just disgusting. I mean, it was 40% strikeout rate for the last 2 months of the season.
that's
Working
just
on a
unheard
changeup
of.
as
Yeah.
well. But yeah, what do you think of Shunpeita Yamashita's 2025?
Yeah, so working on the change, I hope he gets to like a changeup or something like that. I think he threw one last year, which was interesting. Overall, I just don't think you see the whiff rates that you see on a fastball like his in MPB. Like
Yeah.
we talk about like Roki Sasaki and like his fastball whiff rate is not as good because guys are like sitting on the fastball and trying to foul pitches off, or at least this is what I believe is part of the issue with Sasaki in terms of whiff rate and just like getting swings and misses. Same with like Miyagi, like you just don't see the velo. Takahashi has a really, really good fastball, but like you don't see the whiff rates that you see from a guy like Yamashita. I mean, 25% whiff rate on a fastball is just absolutely absurd in a league like MPB where a lot of hitters foul off fastballs with two strikes. And I mean, a 19% put away rate is like disgusting too. Like it's above average. And I think the fastball good. Like kind of like throw this fastball curveball, and if guys can handle his fastball, and you almost have to sit on a pitch and you're just guessing at that point. And I think that's what makes him like special. I think the problem is, and I think Snell's a really good point to bring up. Some in the zone. I think Snell's command is like plus, even maybe 70, like double plus. He chooses to like almost be fine with his pitches sometimes and miss. I don't think Yamashita has the same like
Yeah.
command. He's basically just spraying pitches, but his stuff is so elite that he can like spray the zone and get away with it and still get a 25% whiff rate on his fastball when guys are like sitting on it because he has two other pitches that are just absolutely disgusting and he can like throw them basically anytime he wants. It'll be really interesting to see if he adds like a cutter or a slider or just something like hard glove side. But he honestly doesn't even need it because those three pitches are just that good. So yeah, in terms of talent, he's the best. It's tough. It's tough to beat that high vert fastball with that much velo and then just a disgusting breaking ball off of it. I think he could throw those two pitches and like just dominate hitters, and then he has a split that's like really, really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you. I think he's talent wise the best, and so he probably fits in like the top five somewhere. The back stuff is a little bit worrying, but maybe it's not as bad as it seems. I know that I think Devin Williams has dealt with some back issues as well, so it's not like it's an uncommon thing. But I just hopefully he can stay healthy and pitch. And I don't think we're gonna see him for a while in terms of making the move to MLB soon. But I think he's got the highest upside and the biggest talent outside of now that Roki Sasaki's left.
Yeah, he to me definitely feels like a guy that's going to be a $300 million man in like 3 years
Yeah.
time. Um,
And if he's
when
not,
it,
it's like 200, 250. Like
yeah,
he's definitely going to make money.
yeah, the arm talent's unreal. And, whenever I'm kind of near him in person, I'm always just kind of impressed at his build. I mean, he's so like sturdy. He gets bigger. He put on like 10 pounds last year too. And when he's wearing number 11 on the mound, it's just like he feels like MPB era Shohei Ohtani a lot of the times when I'm
Yeah.
watching him. Yeah, if he adds like a horizontal pitch, like you said, like a slider or a sweeper or a cutter, I think that could take him to the next level, but he doesn't need that right now. I was glad that Lance Bresdowski got on him over the winter. So he was talking about, his just sick, like the vert and the whiff rates on the fastball,
Yeah.
like you said. Um, I think a lot of people are going to be, impressed at Yamashita even more this season just because, results based, yeah, last year, first half of the season, it was an ERA in the six range, right? So people are like, oh, what happened? He won Rookie of the Year in 2023. He's falling off. He's like people I've even seen, he's like, oh, he's the new Shintaro Fujinami, right? It's just like you got to believe in the talent. It's going to come through. I just think Shunpeita Yamashita is so sick. And he's in my opinion, he's the most fun pitcher to watch in MPB right now. Another guy that's really fun though, and I know this is a guy you really like, Hiromi Ito. I'm
Yeah,
wondering, am I even higher on him than you are? Because for
you
years,
might be. Yeah.
you have been like kind of telling me just how much you like Ito, obviously. I mean, I think the Nippon Ham Fighters have a lot of different guys, including Kato, that can be really kind of dynamic with the pitch mixes. But Ito, to me, his comfort level going anywhere in the zone on almost any pitch, his ability to generate chase, just kind of the how cerebral he is. I like guys that have, the three fastballs. It's a very wide mix. And then just the late season velocity increase we saw last year of going from a guy that's more 91, 92 to 93, 94 for like the last month and a half of the season. I mean, I don't know if he can maintain that for the full year, and maybe, that's going to come down a bit. Maybe he's going to have some, injury off of that. I don't know. But what I can say is that if he's pitching like he did for the last like 6 or 7 starts last year, I mean, in September, he was like going out there and throwing a complete game every single time with close to double-digit strikeouts. I mean, that to me is easily a top five pitcher
Mm.
in MPB. So yeah, what are your thoughts on Hiromi Ito?
So I this is funny because I saw Seth Lugo pop up on my feed. He threw like 9 pitches a day in a spring training game, and I kind of want to go through like how many pitches Ito actually has. So
Yeah.
I think we have charted 10 pitches. I'm pretty sure he throws a
Wow.
four seam. He throws a cut four seam, which he kind of like cuts the four seam. I think sometimes pitching um like when they track the pitches they get like mixed with the cutter and the
Yeah.
four seam. I think he cuts the four seam like intentionally, and so that's two. He has the slider, which is more of like a sweeper, but then he also has like a little bit of like a traditional like shorter slider, like what Lance Brazowski calls like the Dodger slider, almost like a traditional like shorter slider. And then he has a split finger, which is like a normal split finger grip where he's just doing like kind of this, and then he has like another split finger where he kind of throwing like a split change where he puts like the fingers together, and then he also throws like a normal like circle change up. So that's I think that's 5 or 6, and then yeah, he's got a cutter, a sinker, he's got a curveball, and then a slow curve, and then he has the ephus off of
Yeah.
that as well that he does pop out every now and then. And I think that's it in terms of mixes. So I would say that's about 10 or 11 pitches from Ito. And yeah, he's in a similar boat as like Seth Lugo. He's basically just out there mixing, and he can spin like curveballs and he can spin sliders. He's very good at spinning the baseball. But I just think, like you said, he understands his pitch mix and like what he's trying to do with pitches and like what shapes he's trying to get, and then he can like throw them all for strikes. I think that's the biggest thing is just his control and his command and the ability to throw like a lot of these pitches for strikes. I mean, I'm looking at I think I have his full season charted. So strike rate on all his pitches, 71% for the fastball, 68% for the slider, 66% for the split finger, 69% from the curveball, 56% for the changeup because he just kind of like lobs it in there, and then 77% for the cutter, which is just like
Yeah.
absurd. I think I
Yeah.
have way less cutters charted than most places have. And then yeah, like he threw 2 ephyses last year. Like he just drops them in and 50% strike rate on that. So the idea is that he just pounds a zone with a bunch of different strikes, but he also like kind of has the finite command to like command the pitches if he has to. I wouldn't say it's like 60, it's probably 60 grade command, but it's like a plus to above average command, and then he just pounds the strike zone with strikes, and it's just a deep mix. And I think that's the biggest thing is he doesn't get a lot of whiff, but then like you said, like the back half of the year, he's just out here getting whiffs, and he's putting up strikeouts, and it's like I think it was just became a completely different pitcher. Like he started going like I can get whiffs on this deep arsenal. Like I don't have to throw all 10 pitches. Like I can throw the fastball and the slider and work in a cutter here and there, and then throw the splitter and the changeup off of it. Like I think he kind of lessened how much he was throwing the other pitches. But you'll see it every now and then. He'll face like a lefty and it'll drop in like an early curveball to like still a strike, and then it'll kind of go back to like the fastball and the slider. And yeah, I just think some of his pitches are absolutely nuts in terms of like what he can do with certain pitches. And if you look at his like location plus on like Bono's pitch profile, a lot of it is like red. And so it's
Yeah.
just like I don't see a lot of dudes with red location plus
Yeah.
with that deep of an arsenal. So I just think that's like the coolest thing about him is he just understands how to work the zone and like where he's trying to get pitches in terms of pitch shapes. Like he very much understands how to manipulate the baseball, which is just so impressive for a guy who, yeah, I think he could technically even get better at manipulating the baseball the more he gets into it. So but yeah, that sweeper is also fourth best sweeper, third best sweeper in MPB. Like it's really good. Like I want to say it's better than Miyagi's, but it's a really good sweeper.
Yeah. Yeah, like probably other than Imai and Miyagi, it's like you have to put it up there. And yeah, I mean, Ito's a guy we've seen now for 4 seasons, and the production has been incredibly consistent. Like he has kind of
Mm-hmm.
evolved as a pitcher over the years. When he first popped onto the scene as a rookie, he was getting a lot of strikeouts like early on. Then guys kind
Yeah.
of figured him out for a little bit. He had a season where he was a bit more of like a soft contact merchant, but these past 2 years he's been getting like, certainly an above average amount of strikeouts. And I really like about him that he's not fastball like four seam reliant. A lot of kind of
Yeah.
MPB pitchers can be really, four seam heavy. He's in the low 30% range overall, and it's like been going down the last couple of years. So, if when you have 10 pitches, it just gives you the flexibility to do that. Kind of
Yeah.
like, Seth Lugo, kind of like Aaron Nola style. Like I think he's just so like I said, dynamic, and it gives him this kind of uncanny ability to work on his deficiencies as well. I mean, he had some kind of platoon splits issues last year against lefties, but I'm not really worried about that because when you have, that deep of a mix, you can figure something out, you can tinker. Last May he was like having a really rough patch there, but again, 2 or 3 months later, he's like looking like the best pitcher in the league. So I think in terms of ceiling, Ito is incredibly high, and he has a good floor as well. I want to jump to the last right-handed pitcher that I have in tier one, which is Atsuki Taneichi of the Lotte
Mm.
Marines. This guy was, not a super highly touted prospect when he was first drafted back in 2016. I'm pretty sure he was like a late round pick, but the stuff was like legit. So, he in his age 20 season, he had a 27% strikeout rate, which is obviously insane. But then he has to get Tommy John, so you kind of forget about him. He misses a year and a half. Comes back in 2023 and he looks great. He was increasing the splitter usage, started using that much more than the slider, which used to be his main pitch kind of. Um, what I noticed about Taneichi is, he's had kind of like underwhelming results the last few years. The ERA being in like the low to mid threes in an era where, most aces have like a sub 2.5. People are going to look at that and say, oh, is he really ready to like take Roki Sasaki's like ace mantle from him? But, the strikeout rates are some of the best in
Yeah.
MPB. And I feel like he almost kind of throws cross body in a like a deceptive manner that makes the fastball play up because the velo is good, it's like 93, but it's not like so, like disgusting that you're like, oh, how is he getting so many? The run value on it is like really, really good. And he also has talked about how he likes to model his slider after Tatsuya Imai, who is, probably again the best pitcher you could
Makes
possibly
sense. Yeah.
try to model your game after. So yeah, what do you think of Taneichi, and do you think he is ready to kind of become the ace of this team with Roki Sasaki gone?
Yeah. So I think for him, I do think there's a little bit of like deceptive going on. Cross body is probably a good way to put it. Like he probably is a little bit cross body and just like stride direction. Like maybe he's like a little
Yeah,
bit weird in terms of stride direction. So it's throwing hitters off. I do think the four seam fastball is really, really good. Expected PV of 7.6 on the fastball last year, Bono has, and then ex Wobicon of 319. So really good numbers in terms of results, which is what you want. Gets a lot of like infield like pop-ups too,
yeah,
like fly balls on the infield, which probably means guys are like underneath the ball. He's kind of getting guys to like, take weird swings at the ball. And yeah, honestly, the biggest thing that popped out to me was just the slider, almost a 38% CSW percentage or rate on the slider is just absolutely disgusting. Like you don't really see a lot of like 38%, 40% on like a breaking ball. So his ability to like zone the pitch and then also get like swings and misses, that's like a big thing for me. I think when a guy's able to like zone a breaking ball like that, like I think Miyagi does that very, very well. He's able to kind of zone that sweeper and kind of throw it for a strike. Um, Taneichi's kind of in the same boat. Like he can zone the pitch if he needs to and like pick up a strike like behind in the count. And I think that's huge for a guy like him. And then it's obviously like a pretty deep mix in terms of like the four pitches and like how he uses them and just he's using three pitches a lot, but he does have like the knuckle curve in there to like throw as a surprise every now and then to like an opposite handed hitter and stuff like that. But to have that much success, 53% usage on a four seam fastball and
Yeah.
to have that much success, there's definitely something going on there. It's not really like an invisible, but it's more of like a deception. There's definitely something going on there in terms of him getting hitters off balance and getting guys that swing underneath the pitch.
Yeah. I do hope that he incorporates the knuckle curve more this year.
Yeah.
Last spring training, I think he was talking about making that like, a big offering for him, and it wasn't really.
Yeah, he
And
kind
it
of
kind
ditched
yeah,
it.
he kind of
Yeah.
ditched it. Yeah. So I'd love to see him, use the curveball more, maybe like add a sinker or something, kind of to give him like that bridge pitch, because he is a little bit too four seam reliant for my liking, as good as that pitch can be, because he does have these starts where he gets rocked when, say, he's
Hmm.
not feeling the slider or the split. Then he only really has like 1.5 pitches on that day, and it just doesn't work for him. So I think with how, you know, he has the above average velo, the fastball, the four seam is great in terms of establishing it and then working off of it for the slider and the split. But if he had like a sinker, I really think that would push
Yeah.
him to the next level.
I think the biggest thing for a guy like him is if you add like a two seamer or a sinker and you're able to get it like in on the hands of like
Yeah.
same handed hitters or even like throw it away from opposite handed hitters, you're just giving like batters a different look, maybe the second time through an order, maybe the third time through. And so you're getting buyback on like
Yes.
the slider or the split finger or even the four seam fastball. You're just making it look like your four seamer and then just getting a little bit of tail off of it and just getting a little bit of buyback. Like it doesn't have to be a great pitch. It just needs to perform enough to kind of be effective as like a pitch that can give you a little bit of buyback. So yeah, I think if he can like maybe drop the four seam usage against like maybe lefties. It's like 57% against
Yeah,
lefties.
that's
Maybe if he
insane.
drops it to like 45% and then he like works the sinker with the split more or something like that. Like I could see that being a really good like pathway for him to get even better than he already is. Like again, I don't know how he gets the results he does throwing 57% fastballs to lefties and 50% to righties. Like it's kind of impressive that he's able to get that good of results.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the three remaining Southpaws in Tier 1. So that's Foster Griffin, Takahisa Hayakawa, and Livan Moinelo. So obviously two foreign pitchers. We don't talk that often about like foreigners in MPB, but they're good. Griffin, I like am really confident that next year
Mm-hmm.
he's probably going to get like an MLB contract and end up having a lot of success, like Eric Fetty, Miles Michaelis, I always mention, like guys who come to Asia, rediscover themselves, and have really pushed their game to the next level. Griffin last year was number one in MPB and CSW percent, and I think he gets
Mm-hmm.
overlooked in that Yomiuri Giants rotation because obviously, Shosei Togo, Tomoyuki Sugano, you have like the young ace, the veteran ace, and then it's like, oh, you just throw in Foster Griffin, but I mean, Griffin was a lefty killer last year, and he started the year kind of slow. He talked about on a podcast that he felt like after being in the league for a year, guys were starting to figure him out and read him. But he makes adjustments. So he brings in this sweeper in June, and after he adds that sweeping slider, he was basically unhittable. I mean, it was an absolute game changer for him. It was like an ERA in the fives for the first couple months, and then an ERA of 2.5 for the rest of the season. So Um, what do you make of Foster Griffin of the Yomiuri Giants, and what do you even think of his future MLB prospects as well?
Yeah, I think he's interesting because I think as a pitcher, he's kind of evolved while he's been in Japan. And like you even brought up like he was talking about how guys were figuring him out. He had to kind of go with a different game plan, figure something out in terms of finding a pitch that really worked for him. That sweeper is really really nasty,
Yeah,
and I think the biggest thing for him is that against lefties and even like to some extent righties, but for the most part against lefties, he's kind of doing what Miyagi does. Like he's trying to work that outside glove side edge, and he's just working the fastball and then the sweeper off of it. And but he has other pitches as well to kind of lean on with the curveball and even the changeup. Like he'll throw the changeup to lefties, and he'll kind of work like that outside edge. Like he'll throw pitches away from guys, and yeah, the ball will leak back into the zone, but with a dead ball, like you're not too concerned about a pitch as long as you don't like hang it. And I think he has really good command, and he's able to like not hang pitches. So yeah, I would give him like 55 grade command and say that like he does a really good job of working the outside edge. And for me, like some of the ground ball rates on like the curveball is just like I think he can use that pitch to get ground balls when he needs to. And yeah, I also like the whiff percentage on the fastball and the slider. I think that's like right the bread and butter. Like he can get to pitches by having like above average to plus whiff percentages on certain pitches. Like his fastball is up around I believe it was 20%, 19 and a half whiff percentage last year on the four seam. And then the slider's really good at like 33% and or 34%, and then the changeup's good at 41%. And then yeah, the curve even gets some whiffs too. So he's kind of a guy who's able to like get whiffs. And I think that's where a lot of his CSW is like coming from, is like whiffs and not just
yeah.
like called strikes. Like he's able to like get guys to swing and miss at pitches that are like in and out of the zone because he works tunnels really well and he kind of works angles really well and kind of fools batters in terms of getting the pitch to look like it's going to end up in the zone and then it ends up out. Yeah, I mean he's really good at that. So I really like Foster Griffin this year. And in terms of his MLB aspirations, or if he like wants to come back over, yeah, I think he could have some fair success. To be honest, like Eric Fetty from KBO, like came back over was pretty good. Like I could see Foster Griffin like being better than Eric Fetty, or maybe even better than like Miles Michaelis. Like I definitely could see him like having a chance and having a real shot at like a rotation spot if he wanted one.
Yeah, and Griffin, he's not one of these like foreign pitchers that beats you with velocity.
Yeah,
You got a lot of guys like Andre Jackson, Anderson Espinoza that can really kind of
it's
blow
like
away MPB hitters with the velo. But
right velocity with movement. Like they're like
yeah,
blowing away guys.
yeah,
Yeah, he's not
yeah,
doing that.
like Griffin having he has three fastballs, and then the sweeper. I mean, he can backdoor it to righties. He can go away to lefties. I think the changeup and the split play really well off each other. The changeup thrown slightly harder, plus he zones it more. So yeah, I just think Griffin is kind of really underrated, to be honest. I mean, he's kind of in that same range as Taneichi in terms of not having the surface level results necessarily. I mean, it's an ERA in the threes, which in the dead ball era, people kind of scoff at that. But it's like, yeah, I definitely think Griffin could easily like turn around and have like an ERA in the low twos this year, even. How about another foreign pitcher, Livan Moinelo? We have touched on Moinelo actually a few times in the past because I think back when he was a reliever, people recognized that this is one of the best spin masters in all of Japan. A guy who I believe will probably be in Japan his entire career because he's Cuban. But his transition from reliever to starter last year, absolutely seamless. I mean, we saw it 2 years ago with Kaimatira, but it worked like even better for Moinelo. He won the ERA title in the Pacific League last season. He even as a reliever, he had that deep four pitch mix. So I kind of was I knew he would have a lot of success, but I wasn't sure if he could have the workload. But he did. I mean, he threw over 160 innings. Pretty simple yet effective approach that he has. It's like fastball changeup to righties mostly, fastball slider to lefties. And then the curveball is like a good third or fourth pitch for him for both hands. Insane ground ball rate on the curveball, by the way. But yeah, what do you think of Moinelo, and do you have any concerns about him in year two as a starter?
Yeah, so I'll clean this up. I'll admit a mistake. I was on Moinelo when I was looking at it, and I was like, these numbers don't seem right. For Foster, I'll go ahead and clean this up. 16% on the four seam. Cutter was 22% whiff rate. Slider was 34%. Split finger was 48%. So like it's a deep pitch mix for Foster, and he's able to like work
Yeah.
that outside edge. I was on Moinelo when I was talking earlier about whiff rates. So Moinelo is the guy who like there's whiff rates there, and he gets whiffs and he gets swings and misses. But his transition from reliever to starter was just fascinating because he went from being this guy who had like 200 grade stuff plus
Yeah.
numbers, like it was just absurd, like the stuff plus numbers he was getting. If you look at some metrics, and just going off of that, and kind of transforming himself as a pitcher. And like you mentioned, I said it when we were talking about Foster, but this is obviously Monelo's numbers. Like the curveball, 77% ground ball rate. I think we have. I just want to check this because we don't have sack bunts and pitcher at bats
Yeah.
excluded. So this is like the actual ground ball percentage. But his ground ball rate on his curveball, yeah, this year was 77.4%. So that is
Yeah.
just, I mean, he should throw
Crazy.
that pitch more. I
Yep.
wrote in my report, and it's going to come out sometime next week. Um, I will never argue against throwing that pitch more. That pitch is one of the best pitches in MPB. It's one of the best pitches in the world.
Yep.
It's
3,000
a
RPM.
nasty, yep, 3,000 RPM. It's a nasty curveball. He should throw it more. And the fact that he doesn't, I think there's a pathway for him to be better than he is now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I much like Griffin, he kind of works like the outside edge as much as possible. Like I do think Griffin like there's a little bit more finesse, and he's able to like work the sinker like back into like maybe a lefty. Whereas Moinelo's like, I'm gonna throw this pitch out here as much as possible, and my stuff is so good. Like I'm just gonna try to hit a spot, and when I get behind in the count, you know what I'm gonna do? Like screw it, I'm just gonna attack the zone, and if you hit a fastball out, like so be it. Like
Yeah.
he kind of gives in certain some at bats because he's like, my stuff is so good. I'm just gonna trust that I can almost outstuff you, and I think that's just like the coolest thing about him. Um, he has like no fear. I will say that that was a little bit like weird when I was looking him up and writing the report. Was like 7 home runs given up to righties on his fastball last year. So again, he just like he doesn't really care if like a guy
Yeah.
hits a fastball out. I guess he's more like if a guy isn't on base and I'm not giving him multi-run shots, then so be it. Maybe that's when he got in trouble sometimes too, was he would give like multi-run shots. But I'm really fascinated in like how he's able to like work the zone, and he very much like tries to work away from lefties, and then he tries to elevate the fastball against righties. And I think he's one of like the few starters in MPB who really like tries to elevate the fastball as much as possible. We have catcher locations on our end, and I was looking at some of them. I was like, wow, this is a lot of like four seams up. Like even if he doesn't always hit that spot, like
Yeah.
there's an intention to like throw the pitch up there, and I don't think a lot of other pitchers will do that in MPB. And he's kind of one of those guys who does that a lot. Yeah. So I really like the four seam. It took a little bit of a step back because it went, two ticks down or whatever. Because he was kind of transitioning to being a starter. I would say there's almost more in the tank in terms of getting like another two ticks back, even.
Yeah.
I think he was backing off a little bit in terms of effort, and I think he could like if he finds that sweet spot, get to 94, 95 on the four seam. I think last year, I just want to check this and make sure. Yeah, I had 92.9
Yeah.
average fastball velo. So yeah, about 93 on the fastball, but I think there's a little bit more there. I think he can get back to like 95 if he really wanted to, and that would just play up everything else because
Yeah.
the slider is disgusting, the curve is disgusting, and the changeup is also really, really nasty. Him and Foster are kind of interesting that they both can like supinate and pronate really well. So they
Yes.
can do both really well. And so it gives them a wide variety of pitches, and they can like manipulate the ball in terms of that. Because a lot of guys have a bias towards one or the other. I wouldn't say either of those guys really have a bias towards one or the other. They kind of are very good at doing both, which is really unique in some aspects.
Yeah, I think Moinelo last year, like because the transitioning to the starter was kind of thrown onto him at the last second in spring training, he was probably
Yeah.
playing it safe of being like, I don't want to overexert myself to where
Was it
now he,
January when they were like, yeah,
yeah,
you're making the move? That's crazy. Like
yeah,
that's
because
crazy.
over the winter when he was pitching in Cuban National Series, like he was like, I don't know, like I don't know, whatever the team wants from me, I'll do it. So then it's like, I think he was trying to, kind of pace himself, but now he's like, okay, I have a full year under my belt. Now I know what I can do. And even though that, Kohei Arihara kind of is the ace of SoftBank in terms of, being the innings eater. We saw in the Japan series that like Moinelo is the actual like best pitcher on that team, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I love Moinelo, and let's finish off then tier one with Takahisa Hayakawa of the Rakuten
Mm,
Eagles. He's probably the one guy I was the most iffy on. Like, does he actually deserve to be tier one? Because last year's results to me
ooh.
were just crazy in terms of the first 3 years of his MPB career. We had not seen anything like this. He was a top prospect coming out of college, and I wouldn't say he was entering bust territory, but he was just like, man, he's just not as good as people expected. Kind of a huge home run problem, like for 3 straight years. But then 2024 rolls around and he lowered the four seam usage. He was getting more ground balls because he was using more breaking balls. And he had almost 5 pitches with 10% plus usage. So, like a true master of mixing and
Yeah.
matching, in my opinion. The split and the change are like great pure putaways. He did say in an interview last month that he altered his changeup grip slightly, which is surprising to me because it's like the changeup was like maybe his best pitch last year. But he's saying that he wants to get more like screw action on it to use it down and into lefties, which is interesting to me because he didn't use the pitch that much to same-handed hitters last year. So I like that he's like not, just being like content with what he did last year. He's trying to build on it. But he's not really a hard thrower, and the fastball doesn't really blow you away. So what do you make of Takahisa Hayakawa?
So this is great because I was finishing up Miyagi today and I was like, okay, I need to do the October 6th start. And who was he facing? Hayakawa. So I was like, this is awesome. I'll get to watch
Yeah,
Hayakawa. I'll get to watch Miyagi, but to finish out Miyagi and kind of get ready to write that report. And then I was watching like Hayakawa go through, and that game was a little bit weird because ended in rain shortened
yep,
and there was just rain. It was torrential downpour the entire time. And I think both of those guys were like fighting through
yeah.
like the
The velo
rain
was
and just
down
fighting.
as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Velo was down and it was significantly down. Like you could just tell, like he was more sitting like 140 kmph, 139 on the fastball. But to me, what is fascinating is I don't think it's a particularly good pitch in terms of like stuff plus or metrics, or it's going to be a good pitch for him in terms of like pitch shapes
yeah,
and like actually looking good. But his cutter is like the biggest pitch he has. Like his
right.
cutter sets up the rest of his arsenal. And I think that's the biggest thing is when he gets behind in the count, cutter.
Yeah,
When he wants to like get the ball in the hands of like a righty, cutter. He'll backdoor it to a righty. He'll
yeah,
throw it away from a lefty. And I'm like, to me, I'm just looking at him pitch, and I'm like, man, he really trusts that cutter. Like he trusts his ability to like spot that pitch and to almost like work it off of his fastball. And I don't think his fastball is particularly good, as you mentioned, either. So like, what does he do that makes him so successful? Well, his changeup is nasty. Like there's something about the way he throws it, and like he doesn't slow down his arm speed. He's really deceptive with it, and yeah, I'm not really sure why he's altering the grip because I like the changeup a lot. 40% CSW rate last year on it,
yeah,
like that's an absurd CSW rate for
yeah,
for a changeup. You don't see that a lot of times, and same with like the curveball. The curveball is also unique in that like it's like 120, 121 kmph, which is like not this loopy like slow pitch. It's more of like in a tighter band. And I think that's the biggest thing about him is he's in this like tight velo band and like all his pitches, but they're distinct shapes and they're distinct velos within this like tighter band. So he's kind of getting guys, I guess, to see fastball and swing at something else, which is really impressive and probably the reason he succeeds. because I don't think anything like screams like, wow, this pitch is awesome, except for the changeup. Um, and he kind of has to get to the changeup is the biggest thing, right? Like he has to get to the
Yeah.
ability to throw the changeup and to have a 33% put away rate on it. Like he has to get to that pitch. But if he gets to that pitch and he's in a position to throw it, he'll throw it to guys and he'll strike guys out. And like that's just like huge. And like you were saying, he didn't even really throw it to lefties last year. Like Bono has 23 on his pitch profile right now. Like imagine if he throws like, I don't know, 80, 90, 100 changeups to lefties next
Yeah.
year. Like if he just ups that percentage by like a lot because he's like, this is my best pitch. Like, let me just throw it. I think he could even throw it like down away to like lefties and it would be good too. Like I don't really think he needs like the screwball action down in. He doesn't need the depth and sink down and in, but that would be really cool. I mean, if he changes the pitch and it becomes like a 200 stuff plus changeup,
Yeah.
by all means do it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we'll monitor that in terms of like how he throws it and like what he does with it. I also found it a little bit interesting that he's like a guy who takes his eyes off the target when he throws. So like
Right.
when he's going to like
Interesting.
throw, his eyes will like come up and then he'll kind of like see the zone out of his peripherals and then like throw a pitch. It's not as exaggerated as like Yuki Matsui, but he'll definitely like pull his head up and like kind of look away from the zone. And I always find that a little bit fascinating with like how guys, do certain things. Like some guys lock in on the zone and like don't move their head at all. And then other guys kind of like throw their eyes up. Whereas like Moinelo, we could even go back to him. Like he has that head snap where he is like a significant head snap. So it kind of affects his command sometimes. Whereas like Hayakawa, like I wouldn't say he has great command. He kind of sprays the ball everywhere, but he has really good control and he just pounds the zone with like this deep pitch mix. And he's just working it off his fastball. And to me, that's super impressive that he's able to put up numbers like that. I don't see him falling back too much, except like maybe he just gets a little bit more unlucky this year. Like
Yeah.
he just, runs into a little bit more issues. But I still think he should be like a top 10, top 15 pitcher this year, even if he like hits the floor. I think we've seen his ceiling. Maybe his floor is a little bit lower. But yeah, I still really like him in terms of like how he mixes his pitches and how he mixes and matches against guys.
All right, moving on to the tier two guys. The first one who's kind of on the cusp, I wanted to include him in tier one, but he hasn't really had the results to earn it yet, is Chihiro Sumida of the Seibu Lions. Kind of funny that we finished off with Hayakawa for tier one, kind of the below average fastball, elite changeup. Well, that describes Sumida perfectly as well. Sumida is a guy who I think I'm probably higher on than just about anyone. He was number two in MPB last year in CSW percent, right up there with Foster Griffin and Roki Sasaki, Miyagi as well. I think he hides the four seam pretty well, despite the fact that it's, below average velo, but he doesn't use it all that much anyway, so that's fine. Plus the velocity actually has been going up ever so slightly like every year, so it might actually end up being average eventually. The plus changeup, obviously. I mean, I think that pitch is just diabolical. I don't even know if like the specs necessarily make it the best changeup in MPB, but certainly based on the aesthetics of it, the visuals of it, I just think the way guys wave at it and just absolutely are fooled on it makes it, probably the most disgusting pitch in MPB. And I think the split plays off of it really well because it's like he throws the splitter like 6 miles per hour harder. So it just gives guys like a different offering there on a bit of a slower off speed pitch. So yeah, what do you think of Chihiro Sumida, and do you think he's ready to take that next step and kind of enter this upper echelon next year?
Yeah, Sumida is probably like my most fun pitcher to chart outside of Ito. Just the way he kind of like moves the ball around and kind of just attacks the zone as a lefty. And yeah, the velo is not there. The stuff isn't as good. I mean, it's probably on this list is probably the worst fastball, right? In terms
Yep.
of like metrics or how it looks. But he kind of gets away with like being able to like cut it, and he kind of gets a little bit of ride up and into like righties, and he kind of rides it away from lefties too. Um, and so I think like that cut ride action that he gets is really interesting, and he strikes me as like a supernator that's able to pronate
Mm.
really well. Like
Right.
that's kind of like the crazy thing about him is I do think he has like a supernation bias, But
Mhm.
like I mentioned earlier, with like a couple of those other guys, like he pronates really well and is able to get like depth on that changeup down the way. Yeah, let's talk about it. I think the changeup is like the I think it's the best changeup in MPB. I think
Yeah.
the only other changeup that could possibly touch it is Hayakawa and maybe like a couple of other guys. But I just like the way he manipulates the pitch because he'll like pronate and like get out like over the top and like get depth, but then he'll also like stay behind it and like turn his wrist and like cut it. So he'll like cut it away from lefties. And
Yeah.
so he's like not afraid to throw it to lefties either. And so it's like I just I don't know if I've seen a guy like throw his changeup with like cut away from lefties too. And you can kind of see it on like heat maps. Like he kind of is targeting like down away from lefties, and then he's kind of doing the same thing against righties. Like he's going like middle down. So he's trying to like make it look like it's fastball and then just kind of get that dive, get that depth. So I just think the way he's able to command that pitch and then also like manipulate it and like cut it and pronate a little bit and get sink and drop on it is just really impressive. And again, he's one of those guys where like because he like throws like a cut right four seam, like he's trying to get the pitch to angle into righties and like in on the hands and like he's trying to attack that inside corner. And I don't think his command is like amazing on his four seam, but I do think his command is really, really good on his changeup and his splitter, as you said. Like those two pitches are pretty nasty. Yeah, I just think it's like different looks too. It's like he's getting like the backspin look of the split, and then he's more getting like a spin almost like
Yeah.
this with the changeup. So I just think it's like really cool stuff. And then he's able to cut it too, which is just I don't know if I've seen that. Like I just don't know if I've seen a guy cut his changeup as much as he does. And he throws it a lot to lefties too, 13% last year. Like that's just a lot of changeups to lefties as a left-handed pitcher.
Yeah, so for the changeup for qualified starters last year, like the only other guys that had a better whiff rate on it were Kazuya Ojima, Takahisa
Mm,
Hayakawa, Livan Moinelo. Those guys are all, their changeups are great. I just think maybe Sumida just is able to sequence it the best, or he's able to, tunnel it the best to where it just gets the best results, I think, in terms of the usage of it. And you mentioned the fastball probably being the worst out of all the guys in tier one and tier two that I have. And yeah, in terms of the fastball stuff, plus on Bono's model, 85. The next worst is Katsuki Azuma at 86, and everyone else is over
mm.
100. So, I mean, I was pretty cognizant of this fact that it's like I like guys with a good fastball, obviously, but
Yeah.
you have to be pretty special, like an Azuma or a Sumida, to really, earn your way onto like this tier one, tier two range with a below average fastball. But yeah, I mean, Sumida last year, he did have like a reverse splits issue. Wasn't that big of an issue for him in 2023, though. Lots of curveballs to lefties. I think we talked about this
Yeah.
one time before. I think because it's so slow, it's like a low 70s curveball, probably a bit too easy to read
And
off
it
the
has
hand.
sweep too. Like it's a
Yeah.
sweeping curveball almost, so it has sweep to it. Yeah, so it's a little bit weird to read off the hands.
Yeah, like it gets a lot of grounders against like righties. It's not a bad pitch at all. I just think he needs to lower the rate of it from like, 24% down to like
Do you
15%.
want to see more cutters and sliders? Like I don't think they're good pitches necessarily. I don't. Maybe he's not good at pronating, but there's
Yeah.
something about like the way he throws his cutter and his slider that he's not getting like the best like movement on those pitches, and so he just kind of like doesn't throw them, and to me that's just kind of like the weirdest thing. Like he'll throw his cutter like every now and then, and he'll throw the slider, but they kind of like don't separate, and he doesn't get like
Yeah.
a movement profile on him. So I don't really know what the answer is. Like maybe he doesn't, maybe he's not a good supernator because I find it weird that he's like cutting his four seam and like getting behind the ball and cutting it, but then he like can't spin a slider. He
Yeah.
can't like throw a cutter. It's
Yeah,
kind of weird.
I think kind of like Hayakawa, you would probably benefit from more lefty on lefty changeups. And he does kind of have like a
Just lean
very.
into it. Just
Yeah, I
lean
think
into it.
so. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just, I mean, it's such a great pitch for him that there's no sense in not trying it more. And otherwise, I think probably location. I mean, it's just like he throws a lot of like low glove side just in general. So maybe kind of
Mm-hmm.
switching it up would benefit him. But I think he really is like one tweak away from kind of ascending and becoming one of the top lefties in MPB. I mean, he already is, but if he really wants to be up there with like guys like Miyagi, I think he can get there. Obviously, the like I said, the below average four seam makes it harder, but I think that pitch can get closer to average because I've seen him throw, 151 kilometers per hour.
Yep.
That's like 92, 93. Like I know he can get up there. I don't think he can maintain it for a whole game, but he has it in the tank. So it's not like that bad of a pitch.
And the idea of like he could sit 89, 90, 88 in a given start and then jump up to 93 and like kind of sneak up on a guy. I
Yep.
think that would be really awesome if he could do stuff like that and start getting it. But if you're number two in CSW rate, like
Yeah,
you're doing something right. So
absolutely.
and let's be honest, he could go full Red Sox and just eliminate the four seam, and he'd
Yeah.
probably still be a good pitcher.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would just be really interesting if he just like stopped throwing it and like there was almost nothing to like work the changeup off of. But I know Alan Yeager has like talked about like he has a theory of like the infinite changeup where you can just like throw changeups over and over again. And
Yeah.
if it's really,
The
really good, like it doesn't matter.
Tommy
So
Kahnle.
maybe like, yeah, just lean, yeah, Tommy Kahnle, just lean into throwing like 60
Yeah.
changes in a row or something like that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
wouldn't
think,
suggest that in MPB, but yeah,
yeah.
that, I mean, that's exactly
Yeah,
what he
I
could
think
do.
Aaron Curry is kind of like the changeup pounder in MPB. It's like because he
Yeah.
doesn't have any good pitch other than the changeup that he uses it as his main pitch like over 30%.
Yeah, we
But
can talk about him a little later because I think he also has like multiple different grips on it too. Like
yeah,
he
right.
manipulates it a little bit. So we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah,
Yeah.
like maybe just the infinite changeup, like just throw a bunch of changeups. Like the pitch is that good. And the fact that he can like get depth and like drop on it and sink the other way, and then he can cut it like against lefties and cut it down away. I think he could throw it even more and he would succeed. So yeah, maybe even lessen the fastball usage. It's already down at like under 40%, like 38%. Go all the way to 30%. Like just really
Yeah,
like drop it. So I mean, yeah, I
definitely.
can see that.
Yeah, let's hit on the other lefties in this tier. So Katsuki Azuma, who we have actually talked about in the past, and then Ryuhei Sotani for the Orcs Buffaloes. I think Sotani is like ready to take the next step and just become like a top five starter in MPB. I think he's already there. He just doesn't have the sample size to prove it. I mean, he's a hard thrower with multiple fastballs. I mean, it's basic. I think he's kind of in splinter territory as well. I mean, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure, but it's like it is kind of like a sink with a split or a split with sink action. And then his slider is even kind of slurvy, so he's just kind of unique to me and like just the offerings he has. And he knows how to pitch. It's like a lot of textbook pitching. It's like throw strikes early in the count with fastballs and then finish guys off with that like slider. His main issue in his rookie season was that he wasn't able to work deep into games. They were kind of trying him out as like an opener, but he was just like dominating on the farm. And then, last year, he ended up being top 10 in CSW percent, working slightly deeper into starts. And yeah, I mean, I just think Sotani is right there with the best of the best already. And then as for Azuma, um, another mix and match master, right? With the deep arsenal. I think he hides his four seam quite well as well. Um, Great elite location. The walk rate's below 5% every single
Mm-hmm.
year. I just think he knows how to use like all his offerings. Like he can jam righties with the cutter, he can backfoot them with the sliders, he can go sweeper away to lefties. Another guy that gets a lot of chase outside the zone, and just kind of becomes a soft contact merchant. So yeah, what do you think of Sotani and Azuma?
Yeah, so Tani's probably the one I've seen the least of on this list. Probably under 7 games I've charted for him, but still, like I've seen plenty on video to kind of have an opinion. What stood out to me is he doesn't really extend, like he doesn't really get down the mound.
Yeah,
He's very much like short striding, and it kind of creates like a higher arm slot, like maybe like a 3/4 arm slot, like high 3/4.
yeah,
And I just think he creates like a funky look for guys, and the stuff is good. Like I think his stuff can play in an MPB like starter role, and it could have in 2023. Like it was that good. Um, he kind of strikes me as like the average four seam, average split guy who just like that slurvy slider is like really really good, and so he just like drops into the zone. He just like does a little bit of like unique things with it. And yeah, and then he works like this little like tiny like cutter off of it too. So he's kind of like working the cutter slider tunnel. Yeah, I really like Sotani in terms of like how he throws, and like even though he doesn't extend down the mound, and I kind of would almost shy away from a guy who has like doesn't have that much kind of like lessens his extension and doesn't really get down the mound.
Yeah.
But I think that actually creates like a unique like look and like profile for him and like the way he throws. And it's almost like a whipping like arm action, like he's
Yeah,
dropping
it's quite
the
top
like
heavy.
long arm. Yeah, and it's very top heavy, like he's whipping his arm around. And so I just think the ball like kind of jumps on guys sometimes. And maybe that's why his numbers on some of those pitches are like really, really good. And like I said, he can zone a slider. Like he's not afraid to like zone his slider. Like he's definitely trying to throw it, you know, down and away. But no, I think as a lefty, he's trying to zone the pitch too. So and he'll get like called strikes on it too, like
Yeah.
freezes and like strikeouts because it's just like this loopy pitch, this slurvy pitch that like drops in. I don't think guys are expecting it. So yeah, I would almost consider him to like take a step forward. Do you have him 10 on your list? Is where you have him?
Yeah, I have him in the top
Yeah.
10. And, I think another thing about him that is unique is there aren't that many left-handed starters in MPB that can like run it up to mid 90s. It's just like
Yeah.
lefties, hard throwing lefties is kind of rare. And that's why when Japan played Chinese Taipei in the final of the Premier 12, Yumin Lin, the Diamondbacks prospect, he was throwing kind of like mid 90s fastballs from the left side. And that caught a lot of Japanese hitters off guard. It's just not something you
Mm-hmm.
see all the time. You do with relievers, sure, especially foreign relievers like an Alberto Baldonado or a Nick Turley might come in and whip like high 90s on you, but it's not that common. And so I just think if he raises, say, the average velo up to like 93, 94, I mean, then it's like, man, Sotani's cooking. He has
Right.
multiple fastballs, plus he has that slurve, and he's like, just a lot of like, not even that much separation. It's just a lot of like little tiny movement horizontally, and it just guys can't hit it.
Right, right. And I think if he was able to like up the tick like one or two ticks, I just think that helps like the fastball overall and
Yeah.
probably helps like the shape even. And it makes it like a 55 grade fastball, maybe even plus. As a short strider, it just seems weird to me. I would usually be out on like a short stride guy like that. But for me, I think he creates such a unique look. And when I watch him against like lefties, I just think his stuff like explodes sometimes, like you were saying. Like it's tiny movements, but like it just jumps on hitters. And he's obviously doing something creative with his arm angle and like the way he's throwing pitches against guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And then how about Azuma? What do you think of
Ooh, yeah.
yeah, because I mean he has been eating a ton of innings these past 2 years after missing so much time with injury. He missed almost like not three full seasons, but
So
effectively. So what do you think about him?
result based, the four seam is the worst on this list by
Yep.
far.
Yep.
Um, and he throws it 38% of the time, but he almost throws it to just like as a show me pitch.
Yeah.
And he'll throw like early count changeups, early count sweepers. He'll throw the fastball in the middle of a count, like 1-2 or like 1-1, and just like as like a show me, and then he'll go back to like one of his other pitches that's just better. But he's one of those fascinating case studies where he's like got this fastball that kind of is like deceptive and like just jumps on people, and it's like a I wouldn't even say it's an invisible. It's kind of like the similar idea to what like Imanaga is doing. Like he's getting this low slot and just like getting the vert on it. But it's not really a great pitch. It's more just the fact that he locates it extremely well.
Yeah.
And so he's able to like buy back some of that stuff by locating the pitch so well. And then he's able to locate his sweeper. And then like I almost consider his like cutter like a slider, like a short slider, and then his slider like a sweeper. So he's basically just working that tunnel of like cutter slider. There's a lot of blue on his page when you like look at it, but then you look at the results and you're like, this dude just eats innings and just puts up quality start after quality start after quality start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I like that he can like zone the cutter slider. Um, and I do like that about him, and I think that's like his biggest strength is that he can just like zone that pitch and get some buyback on the four seam. And like you were saying, the four seam locations are like good.
Yeah.
Against righties, he's working like arm side away, and then against lefties, he's working like into them and stuff like that. And he's just able to like hit those spots. And he does spray, and I don't think he has like plus command, but I think he has enough command of his fastball to like work it in and out of counts and stuff like that. It's just a crazy thing to me, honestly, that he's throwing 40% fastball with his fastball being quote unquote bad. But I
Yeah.
think there's just some deception going on there with him.
Yeah, I think he's just really good at like avoiding damage zones, basically. It's just like he avoids getting rocked. It's like even if he gives up contact,
Yeah.
it's just like it's a lot of soft stuff and
It's like, oh, here's a liner for a single. Like, okay,
yeah,
whatever. I'll just go to the next
exactly.
guy.
And he had that streak of like 30 plus quality starts in a row going back to 2023. So yeah, I think Azuma one of those guys where it's just like, the results don't lie. So at this point you got to give him the respect.
Should we up the threshold for quality starts in MPB? Like, should there be a metric that isn't
Yeah,
quality
so
starts?
there is high quality starts, which is 7 innings of
Mm-hmm.
2 earned runs or fewer, and like honestly, in the dead ball era, that's like way better of like a metric. I mean,
Yeah.
as good as quality starts can be, because obviously I think it's inherently flawed in some ways, but I think it tells you a lot about like keeping your team in the game, obviously, right? And
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Azuma, like to a certain extent, like having a win-loss record as good as he does over the past 2 years, it just shows you like they don't lose when he's on the mound. It's just like
Right.
he's like, like
It's win
15
day
and
when he takes the
3.
ball. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's win day when he
exactly.
takes
It's
the
just
ball.
like
Yeah.
it's just psychologically, I'm sure he has like a lot of positive impact on the team. Um, but let's move on to a couple other pitchers here in tier two. Let's go with the Hanshin Tigers guys. Let's group them together. Hiroto
Okay.
Saiki and Shoki Murakami. So I think Shoki Murakami, if we talked last year at this time, we would have viewed him as a top five pitcher for sure. I mean, he won MVP and Rookie of the Year in 2023. Super low walk rate, another command specialist, and I think all five of his pitches had a opponent batting average below 200 in 2023. So just a guy that was just absolutely painting and doing a lot of things right, but kind of a big step back in 2024. Like he was still good, obviously, but especially against lefties. I mean, it was a 737 OPS against lefties, whereas it was a 536 against righties. So or other way around actually. So it's a reverse splits issue. And I just think the cutter is not that effective against righties. Um, but I still think he has excellent command. I really like that split finger. So, I'm thinking that Murakami can bounce back this year. And then with Saiki, I mean, it's an elite fastball. 2,900 plus RPM at the Premier 12 on
Mm-hmm.
his four seam. 124 stuff plus. It has the best run value for fastball than MPB since 2023. I think he locates it well up in the zone as well. The secondaries don't really pop off the page that much for me, but I think they're good enough. So yeah, what do you think of Saiki and Murakami, and who do you think is honestly like their ace? Who's the better pitcher for 2025?
Yeah, if you had talked to me in like last offseason, I probably would have said Murakami, but I think I'm gonna go Psyche. And this is when we can use the term invisible. Like
Yeah,
this is an actual invisible. He just does something that's a little bit different, a little bit unique, and the ball just jumps on dudes. And like you said, 2,900 RPMs on the four seam. Like he can backspin a fastball. I
yeah,
really like when they're like close up on the grips and you can just like see the ball come off his hand and you're like, wow, that's like pure backspin. Like
yeah,
he's efficiently backspinning a fastball. And I think that's the biggest thing for him, right? Is I mean, he's able to throw that pitch relatively hard, around 91, 92. And, he's just able to like, run that pitch up. And yeah, I don't really care about the other pitches. And if that makes sense, like I like the slider, split's fine. The curveball is really, really slow. Like, okay, cool. Like it's all about getting back to the fastball. Like that those other pitches just keep guys off of the pitch
yeah.
that he's going to get guys out with. And I don't think it's going to be like a ton of strikeouts or a ton of like whiffs. I think he does get strikeouts and he does pick up stuff like that. But I think it's all about like just keeping the ball in the yard and just moving on. And I think that where they play too, like that dirt infield,
Yeah.
um, we've had conversations about this with like DRS, like does the dirt infield like impact like how we should be like looking at like Hanshin like DRS on the infield? Like does it slow down the ball almost? Because it's also like that clay dirt where it kind of
Yes.
like slows the ball down. So the fact that these two guys can like somewhat, I think Saiki's way less ground ball reliant than a guy like Murakami is, but the fact that he can just keep the ball in the yard and get ground balls occasionally, and then those ground balls get gobbled up is huge. I will say his ground balls, like there's a lot of like faint blue on his like stuff when you look at like ground ball percentage for Saiki, and he's more like, letting the ball get in the air. But I still think he's able to keep the ball in the yard, which is like the biggest thing
Yeah.
to me. And their fastball is really, really good. Murakami, on the other hand, like again, not a ton of ground balls, but like again, when those guys do go ground balls at Hanshin, I feel like they get an out.
Yeah.
like it turns into an out somehow. So again, uh, it's a deeper mix for Shoki, but I just don't love his stuff. I think it's like above average. It's average. Whereas like he doesn't do an elite thing like Saiki does. So I think I would lean Saiki over Murakami, but I do like the like deep mix of Shoki. And I think when he's at his best, he's kind of mixing pitches. He's mixing the cutter and the split with the four seam. He's throwing the curveball that's really, really slow. He kind of has like two different curveballs. He has like a normal like 115, 110 kmph curveball, and then he has like a really slow one at like
Yeah.
103. So he kind of like does that where he kind of like mixes those two pitches. And yeah, I like his like depth of his mix, but I just don't think he does one skill particularly like really, really well like Seki does.
Yeah, so you take Saiki over Murakami. What if we add Yomiuri Giants pitcher Shosei Togo into the mix? Where would
Mm,
you rank these three? Because to me, I think I have Togo ranked a little bit lower than most people would have, just because I mean, in terms of the results, they've been great. It was a sub 2 ERA last year. He has the most innings in MPB since 2022, which that's a good thing for now. I don't know if it's like good for long-term health of his arm. Um, I think his splitter is very good for getting swing and
mm,
miss, but like Sugano, he barely zones it. So I do like worry that like if say the fastball becomes a little less effective, like guys could just lay off of it and that could like have a domino effect on the rest of his game, for instance. He would kind of benefit from a sinker as well, I think, kind of like the Taneichi thing, because he can be a little bit four seam reliant. And then he basically only uses the curveball against lefties. And Togo, I really like him. I view him pretty similar to Saiki, kind of a
mm.
more fly ball, tendency. A guy that can get above average strikeouts, not necessarily elite. So yeah, where would you rank like Togo within the Murakami and Saiki mix?
I think I would have him ahead of those two guys. And I think it's mainly because he just knows how to pitch. Like he just eats innings, he just mixes pitches well. Um, I don't know, like fastball, split, slider, like he just throws those pitches incredibly well and like tunnels them incredibly well. And he's kind of throwing from a different look. Like we talked about this last time we talked about Togo. Like
Yep.
it's like Sotani, but he's like way over the top. Like he's just
Yeah,
throwing like over the top, like
sure.
down,
Yep.
and he's creating like this steep angle. But yet he gets vert and like he gets rise on his fastball from this unique like high arm slot. So to me, that's like the crazy thing about him is that like his fastball shape is still like good and he gets ride and vert, and from his arm angle it just creates like this like weird vertical approach angle at the top of the zone, but it doesn't really throw it up there either. So like he's kind of like trying to throw the pitch down too, and so maybe he could benefit from elevating the four seam sometimes. But I do think, to your point, he's trying to throw the four seam down and then he's trying to throw the split off of it, and he commands the split incredibly well. Like you said, like he doesn't really throw it in the zone, but that's because he's like throwing it below the zone like all
Yeah.
the time, like 80% of the time, 90% of the time. So yeah, I do worry like can guys just lay off the split, but maybe there's like a deception thing there. Like it just looks so similar to his fastball that he's just able to get like enough whiffs where like it doesn't matter. Like I do think that's interesting that like his two best whiff pitches are his fastball and his split, and then
Yep.
everything else is like really kind of below average. But yeah, he's definitely working that fastball split really well, and I do think the arm angle is a little bit unique. So just purely based off of results and like how much he eats innings and how much he like just throws a ton and he just picks up the ball every 6 days
Yeah.
and throws. I would say Togo, but I think they're all very similar in terms of skill based, like how they are skill wise. So I think that's good that you have them in like a grouping together almost.
Yeah, I definitely had kind of a harder time ranking them. I gave Saiki the nod just because he has like a sub two ERA for 3 straight years. Granted, a lot
Yeah,
of that was in a smaller sample, but Saiki just like, I mean, much like Togo, except in a smaller sample, he's just a master at preventing runs. But I do
and
think I
you
take
brought up the
Togo
fact that
over
you
Murakami.
love, yeah, Togo over Murakami, but you brought up the fact that you love fastballs
Yeah.
or like guys having good fastballs and like Saiki. If we're gonna lean into that, then we're gonna say yeah, Saiki's our guy
Yes.
because his
And
fastball is awesome.
and that actually perfectly segues to the last two right-handers in this tier, Tatsuya Imai and Koki Kitayama. These guys have some of the best
Yeah,
fastballs in MPB, period. I mean, with Imai, he is kind of the epitome of this effectively wild, but also just throw your best pitch mentality. He's like a mini DeGrom in some ways, right? It's all
yeah,
fastball
no, it is.
slider, all fastball slider. It was 94% fastball slider against righties last year, which was up from 79% in 2023. This was a trend I was monitoring like early last season, and I was really happy to see it. I was just like, hey man, you only have like the fastball and the slider, just pound those two pitches and you're going to get the best
Mm-hmm.
results. And then even against lefties, 81% fastball slider, which was up from 68%. And then this year, in an interview last month, he did say he wants to throw more fork balls. He kind of has like a split change, doesn't he? So it's like, I guess if
Yeah, he
he
does. He's been working on
incorporates
different changeup grips. Yeah, it's wild.
yeah, so I think because he's such a hard thrower, I mean 95, 96 on the four seam, and then obviously because of that, the changeup is naturally thrown harder. I think it can work for him, although I don't want him to really like lean off of the fastball slider because it's just so good, but especially against lefties, because lefties do beat him. That would definitely give him a good third offering. But yeah, I mean we'll get to Kitayama next, but first off, what do you think of Tatsuya Imai?
Yeah, he kind of has the reverse split problem that like Moinelo has. Like, if he's gonna get beat, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna get beat by the opposite hand. Like, okay, if that guy hits it for a homer or hits it for a double, like,
Yep,
so be it. I'm gonna strike out with the next righty in the lineup.
yep.
Like he kind of just lives in that mold. Yeah, he's fascinating, man. Um, his fastball slider combo, like I was talking about Miyagi's being the best, and I do think like the sweeper is like disgusting. But I mean, that's a higher percentage than like Miyagi does with his left-handed fastball slider.
Yes.
It's just insane that he just basically leans into throwing these two pitches as hard as possible too. Like that's another thing is like Miyagi's is like this like slower sweeper, and like he's like really trying to get movement on it. Where Imai's just like, I'm gonna grip the crap out of this ball and just throw it as hard as possible. And I'm just gonna
Yes.
get like the gyro bullet spin, and then I'm gonna get the ball to spin on gyro and just drop. Like he's
Yep.
using gravity to like play with the ball. And yeah, I'm with you. I think it's the best fastball slider combo outside of Miyagi. And I just think he should throw it as much as possible. Like 94% last year, like let's go 98. Like let's
Yeah.
just throw it. Like
Yeah.
I would also, and I brought this up the last time I was on. I think he should start like purposely like throwing like a gyro ball. Like he should
Right.
start like getting behind the ball and like creating the gyro spin and then getting it to go the other way, like a reverse slider. And I know that like popped up on Twitter a couple of times with someone like pointing that out, and I think that's awesome. Like I think he should do that intentionally. I don't know if he can. I don't know if he even thinks about doing it intentionally. But forget throwing a split finger. Forget throwing a changeup. Like let's throw four seams and gyros as hard as possible, and then let's throw a reverse slider off of it. Like let's like really lean in to like using the slider as much as possible, or like using that slider grip as much as possible. So yeah, that would be my like suggestion to him, and I know that like he probably should add another pitch, but like the fastball slider is just so good. Like just throw it. Like who cares? Like I
Yeah.
just don't think hitters can hit it, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
The fact that he throws it that much and he gets the whiff percentages that he does and the putaways is just like
Yeah.
it's actually insane that he throws it that much and gets that many strikeouts.
The stuff with Imai is just off the charts. The only reason he's not in tier one for me is because it's a walk rate in the double digits, and it always is. It's just like he doesn't. He's
Yeah,
always
yeah.
going to have the walk problem, so that it's like the higher whips, and it's like he does kind of risk allowing more runs that way. But I don't mind that. I just think that it creates a little bit more volatility. In terms of the stuff, though, he's like top, maybe even top three in MPB, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you look at even his teammates, Kona Takahashi, Kaima Taira, who also have MLB aspirations, Imai is probably the one guy there though that you're most confident on like making it as a starter in MLB one day. Taira, I like better. It's just that he is, being used as a reliever right now, so I don't know how
Right.
that's going to work. But yeah, I love
In
Imai in that way.
the fallback for Imai is okay. I didn't work as a starter. Let me just go in the bullpen and rip slider
Yes.
fastball.
And it's yeah,
It's
the two
just like
pitches, it's perfect. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So, but I do think he can work as a starter in MLB, and I do think he can work as a starter in MPB. Like, is he in the Blake Snell like blueprint where he's just I'll walk dudes because I know I'm going to strike guys out.
Yeah.
Like I don't care that the bases are loaded. I don't care that it's two guys on and one out. Like let me get the
Yes.
next two guys because they're righties, or let me get the next two guys because I'm just gonna throw them against lefties and just like bury the slider down and then yeah those two pitches are insane. Like the only other dude who even compares to him in terms of like combos is Miyagi and then Ota. Like Ota is the only other dude who it's like okay, like that's legit like fastball other pitch off of it. Like yeah, maybe Rydell Martinez, but we're talking about like the best of the best closers in MPB. Like that's how good his stuff is as a start. Like
Yeah.
yeah, and I would continue to start him. Like yeah, I mean, I think he's efficient enough as a thrower to like go deep into games, and yeah, he's gonna walk dudes. It's gonna be frustrating to watch him. Like I'm sure Sabu Lions fans are like, oh no, here's like two walks, but like it doesn't matter because he strikes out the next two guys.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think with Imai, it's like his ability to like I said, get past the walks, it makes it so it doesn't matter. I mean, he led the league in strikeouts last year, and he can probably do it again. Although I think a dark
What
horse,
would you set the
yeah.
number for strikeouts for him? By the way,
So
like
I
what
want him to get
would be the number?
200. There hasn't
Yeah.
been a guy in MPB that's gotten 200 strikeouts in a while. Like even I guess Yoshinobu Yamamoto was the last one, but there used to be like Takahiro Norimoto would get like 200
Mm-hmm.
strikeouts a year, but now it's just like guys aren't getting enough innings and their K rate, or if they do, it's just like the K rate's not high enough. A guy like Roki obviously or Yamashita would be able to if they threw the innings, but they don't. So I want to see Imai get to 200 strikeouts this year. I do think though the last guy here for tier two that we're talking about has a chance, like a dark horse shot at the strikeout title. Koki Kitayama. Koki Kitayama is like
Mm.
insanely good. His fastball is like, oh, it's a 141 stuff plus. It's a whiff rate over 20%. He climbs the ladder. He knows how to use that thing. And, he kind of came out of nowhere in the sense that he was the opening day starter as a rookie in 2022 after being a fourth round pick. And manager Tsuyoshi Shinjo said specifically he only named him the opening day starter because he was drafted in the fourth round. He wouldn't have done it if he was an early round pick. He wanted to kind of send a message that, like, hey, no matter where I drafted you, no matter where you come from, no matter how low your stock is, I'm going to give you a chance. And, Kitayama was getting all these whiffs on the four seam in spring training, and Shinjo believed in it. And I think he absolutely saw the talent because now we see, 2, 3 years later, this guy's insane. He also had four secondaries with a whiff rate over 30%. Like,
Oh my,
what I'm
yeah.
talking about right now sounds like I'm describing the number one pitcher in MPB. It's just he only threw like 80 innings last year, a little bit inconsistent at times. So he's not in that conversation yet. But like, I guess the one knock on him is it's kind of below average location. He's not the best command guy, a lot like Imai in some ways, but it's a deeper arsenal. Fastball can get up to like 95, 96 as well. So What do you think of Kitayama? And it's like, am I crazy to think this guy could just like jump off and become like maybe even one of the best pitchers in MPB?
No, I mean, out of all the guys on my like list of rank, so I have like color coded like tiers and like guys who are going to come to MLB, or like Moinelo's in like a certain tier because I just love him.
Yep.
Sugano and Otaki and Kato are like in the same tier. Uh, Ohtsu, Imai, Sumida, Kitayama, they're all in like this tier for me where I'm like, these guys are breakout like candidates and like breakout dude, like they're gonna put it together eventually. Um, there's just something about the way he throws, like it just looks appealing, like it just looks good. He kind of pimps the finish,
Yeah.
like whips back the arm like he's cracking the whip. Like I just love his pitch mix. Like everything moves, and he like a lot like Ito, like he understands the shapes and like what he's trying to get to. And the thing with him is he's kind of like, I think sometimes he'll like drop his arm angles too, like he'll change arm angles and kind of do some different stuff. But at the end of the day, like he knows what pitch shape he's trying to get to, and he's almost like setting up the batter with like another pitch. Like he uses misses incredibly well. So I don't think his command is like awesome as you said. I think it's like above average, maybe like an average command, but he uses his misses incredibly well, and he's like very cerebral in like the fact that like he understands his pitch shapes and like what he's trying to do. And I think that's why he has like all these pitches with like high whiff percentages. I mean, if you look at his like page on Bono, it's like a lot of red for like CSW rate, swinging strike rate, whiff
Yeah.
percentage, XPV. Like it's a lot of red. Put away. There's three pitches with red there. Like he's getting put away 22% of the time on his four seam. Like that's crazy. In MPB, that's like nuts. To get 22% as a starter on put away percentage for a fastball. So yeah, I think his stuff is awesome. Like his fastball kind of jumps out of his hand. Like I like the way he pitches, and I love like watching him throw a baseball. I think he's a very efficient like mover too. Is the biggest thing. Like he moves down the mound incredibly well.
Yeah, and he was one of these guys like last year that adopted kind of the Yoshinobu Yamamoto mechanics. There was kind of the big kind of wave of
Mm-hmm.
guys, including Hiroto Takahashi, who initially did this, of just guys trying to kind of copy
Copy
Yamamoto's
it.
routine and mechanics. And I think it worked out really well for him. He had this start on August 24th against SoftBank, where he had 27 whiffs in 8 innings, 10
That was
strikeouts.
without Yanagita, right?
Yeah,
Yanagita
it
was
was
not
without
okay.
Yanagita, but it's still like this is the best lineup in MPB by far.
Yeah,
And
and he's just whiffing dudes.
yeah, he's just blowing them away. And I think you know, Kitayama's again one of these guys where would not be surprised at all if we see him take a huge step forward this year with a bigger sample size, and eventually probably make it to MLB. So that does it for all of tier one and tier two. That's 16 different pitchers, but we got some other guys we can quickly run through. So just naming off everyone I have in tier three. Let's start with that, and then we'll go to the rest. Haruto Inoue, Yumito Kanemaru, Natsuki Takeuchi, Ryosuke Ohtsu, Haruto Takahashi, Trevor Bauer, Andre Jackson, Shoma Kanemura, Yuto Nakamura, Anderson Espinoza, Kohei Arihara, Jeremy Beasley, Kodai Umetsu, Kentaro Taira. This is a really big tier of guys, but these are all guys
Mm-hmm.
who to me are like they're on the edge. They're like really close to breaking through and being in this top tier. You got guys like Kanemaru and Nakamura who are rookies, but I just love their stuff so much. I think they're going to pop off as if they get the opportunity in year one. Inoue for the Giants is like another one of these like crafty lefties that can get, the fastball plays really well, kind of like a Hayakawa, even relative to the velocity. And I just like his breaking stuff like the slider. Haruto Takahashi, not to be confused with Hiroto Takahashi, if he wasn't made of glass, is like a top five
Yeah.
pitcher in MPB. I mean, this guy he has like a 70% ground ball rate, and it's just like his two seamer is disgusting. It's just always hurt. But if if Takahashi's healthy, I mean him, Saiki, Murakami, Hanshin's rotation is stacked. Um, and yeah, I mean I like I mean Kanemura for the fighters. I mean, imagine if Kitayama, Ito, Kanemura, and then they signed out of Taiwan, Ruyang Gulin. It's just like the fighters clearly have the makings of like a super rotation here. And then the DNA Bay Stars with two foreign pitchers here in Bauer and Jackson. So yeah, I kind of hit on a lot of points here, but I know
Mhm.
you like Ohtsu a lot, particularly, and you helped me kind of move them up in the rankings. So yeah, feel free to talk about any of these guys.
Yeah, let's start with Takahashi because I think Haruto is that sinker number right for Stuff Plus?
I
Like
believe it is. I mean,
it
it's
doesn't
insane.
make any sense. 240 Stuff Plus on Bono's model. Like maybe he just like breaks it, but like yeah, that pitch like moves. It moves a lot. He throws it like decently hard, like 89, 88. Um, I mean, I it's a lot of red. It's a lot of red on Bono's pitch profiler, and yeah, I mean it's just a lot of whiffs and a lot of CSW and like you said, the ground ball percentages are absolutely insane. He just hasn't thrown enough innings. So yeah, I absolutely love watching him pitch. Like I think I've done like 3 or 4 starts of his, and I'm just like this dude, like that sinker is. I mean, it's just a ground ball machine. Every time a guy swings it, it's just like chopper to second, chopper to short. Like he keeps the ball in the middle of the ballpark in terms of like the ground balls. And then yeah, let's talk about Ohtsu. Like I think he's like my breakout candidate. Like I think you moved him up in the rankings and I appreciate that because maybe it's not as big a jump for me if I'm like he's a breakout guy. But I kind of want to pick someone like farther down on the list that I actually think Ohtsu, and I don't really understand it because I don't think his stuff is like awesome. I
Yeah.
think it's more just like he mixes and matches really, really well. But when I watch him pitch, I'm like, this dude has like top 10 MPB starter potential, just the way he moves the ball around. And I don't love like the stuff. Like if you look at his stuff, like just don't look at stuff plus. Look at like location plus. Look at whiff percentage on his four
Yeah.
seam and changeup. Like his changeup, that's the changeup that I should have brought up because that changeup it's not Hayakawa, it's not Sumida, but it's a really really good changeup, and I just think he's gonna throw it more. Like I was seeing him throw it against like lefties, and I was like, this is a crazy changeup that he's throwing to lefties, and I don't really understand it because to me he's like working it. His arm speed and his deception is like so good that the ball almost like hits a wall, like it's a Bugs Bunny type effect. Like it just stops and it just like floats for a second and then drops. And he gets swings and misses on it all the time. And I really like his arsenal and like his pitch mix is deep. Like Bono's not gonna have this on here, but like he does throw like a death ball. Like he
Yeah.
throws like a gyro like slider that he's like throwing almost like curveball depth on it. And I'm sure if we saw a pitch plot, we would get like a better look at it. But
Yes.
yeah, he's almost throwing like a death ball, and then he's throwing like a normal slider off of that, and maybe even like a sweeper slider. Like he has a very deep arsenal, and I mean he's throwing the cutter's good. Like the four seems like good enough. Like the four seems good. Like I think he's a breakout candidate for me, and I just like the way he pitches. I like the way he moves the ball around the zone. Like it's not awesome command. It's like 50 grade command, maybe 55. But that changeup is so good. I think he should just throw it to more hitters. Like he should just throw it to lefties and righties. Like I was messaging you like some of those like the one he threw to like Cedeno at one point during the
Yep.
season. It was like this pitch is like absurd. Like this pitch is like stopping at the plate and just like falling off the table. So yeah, I really like Ohtsu, and yeah, Takahashi. Like you said it best. Like he's a top 5 pitcher if he was healthy. Like the stuff is absurd sometimes from him.
Yeah. If Takahashi had more than 30 innings pitched over the past 3 years, then
Yeah.
he would definitely be towards the very top of any ranking.
What
Um,
what other guy would you like want to touch? I mean, Natsuki's like interesting because he
yep.
throws like a one seam, like he throws like a one seamer, like almost like a splinker kind of too. Like he kind of like manipulates the
Yeah.
depth on that. He has got a really good arsenal too. But I mean, there's a couple of guys in this like tier that are good pitchers. Like I know everyone makes the joke about certain pitchers, but like the idea is like all these guys are like talented. Like
Yes.
they've got some talent. And I think a lot of these dudes in this tier could step up to like 15th on the
Yep.
list or 10 on the list. There's a wide range. Those two rookies, well, you sent me some Kanamura video, and I was like, this is like legit stuff. So I'm glad that you kind of like ranked him too.
Yeah, I think with Takeuchi, he's injured to start the year, so we'll see what happens with him. Kanemaru and Nakamura, like I said, with Nakamura, the Yakult Swallows last year were the only team in MPB that didn't have like a single pitch thrown by anybody over like 97 miles per hour. So it's just like
That's
they had
just
no velo to
that
offer.
doesn't sound real. Yeah, that doesn't sound
And
real.
but Nakamura is a starter who can sit like mid 90s and he can run it up to 100. So it's just like I need to see it in action first, like over multiple innings to really buy into it. But having seen him in person when I went to Samurai Japan versus Europe in Osaka last year, it looked like legit as fuck. I saw like 96, 97, 98 on his first three pitches. It's just like that's gonna
That's
play.
crazy.
That's gonna
Yeah,
play. And then
yeah, it's
Kan
easily gonna play.
Kanemaru has just like he can be like he has like a lower kind of slot, and I think it gives him like really high vert attack angle. It's just like he's a lot of breaking balls off of it too. Like he can be kind of like a cross between like a Kazuya Ojima and like a Hiroya Miyagi almost down the line.
Mm,
And then the last two guys I do want to like shout out in this tier. I put them at the very bottom. Kodai Umetsu for Chunichi. A lot of guys are not high on him because he had an ERA in the fours last year. I think he's like really good. I mean, he's like 94 on the fastball, and his splitter and slider are like solid. It's like shallow arsenal, but I almost see him as almost like potentially turning into an Atsuki Taneichi type. I think Umetsu is
mm,
really good, and he was a top prospect once upon a time, but he had to get Tommy John, and he's missed a lot of time as well. So there's that, and then Kentaro Taira for DNA. He's almost like the right-handed version of Haruto Takahashi. Like it's not overpowering stuff, but he's like one of these supernators that I mean his sweeper is like just disgusting and he just gets a
mm.
lot of like whiff and ground balls. So if he was healthier, he would be higher on the list for sure. But I definitely think those two guys can definitely jump off in 2025.
Yeah, and I think for both of those guys, breaking ball, like having a breaking ball that gets you ground balls,
Yep.
both of those sliders get them ground balls. Like they can stay in games because they can get quick outs, they can get early outs by getting the ball on the ground and getting out of the inning and like keeping their pitch counts. I kind of but every time Tyra comes up, I'm typing in like Tyra on our database, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to Kaima, but then I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Katara looks like decently good. Like
Yeah.
yeah, I like Tyra stuff. So yeah, the other K Tyra, but I don't think Kintara is any slouch. Like I actually, like you said, the sweeper and the limited times I've seen it, I think I've done like 3 or 4 games. His sweeper is like is legit. Like it's a good sweeper. So and they get ground balls, which is huge. I think for a pitcher, especially in MPB, but in any league, anywhere for a baseball pitcher, if you can keep the ball on the ground and give yourself a chance to get outs early and quick in games and get deep into games, like that's the biggest thing. That's what makes guys like super effective and super efficient.
Yeah, definitely. Let's finish off with any other pitchers you want to talk about in MPB, any other starters, I should say.
Yeah.
Tiers 4 through 8. There's some notable guys here for sure. I mean, I got guys like Masato Morishita, R.N. Curry, Naoyuki Uesawa making the move back to Japan. I know you like Kotaro Otake. There's Hiroki Takota, who just keeps runs off the board somehow with like really low strikeout rates. I have a bunch of like breakout pick like rookie types. Shinosuke Hada, who throws what 96, 97 from the left side. He's going to be insane one day. Haruya Tanaka, I like him for Lotte. I mean, I'm just naming off guys who I think could pop off this year.
Mm-hmm.
Kyosuke Saito was pitching in Australia over the winter. I think he's good. Masahiro Tanaka now on the Giants. I mean, I saw him throw in spring yesterday. It's like I think he can't possibly be worse than he was last year with Rakuten. So would be
Oh
curious to
yeah.
see if he can rediscover himself. Um, like my first time discovering your work was when you wrote about like Tanaka a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and how he's doing here. So yeah, it would be cool if he still had like one last hurrah in him. But yeah, any other MPB pitchers you want to talk about?
Yeah, I talked about this earlier. Let's talk about Curry because I think Curry's just interesting in terms of like what he does. I'm gonna go back to 2023.
Yeah,
Because that's the last time I have like a full season for him. I don't think I did a full season once I realized he wasn't trying to come over anymore.
yeah,
Which honestly is like probably a better bet for him than than not. But he ended up changing teams too, which I think is one of like the weirdest things to me is like just seeing him in like another uniform. Like
yeah,
I would almost exclusively do Hiroshima games with like Murashita and Curry, and I would just like watch like those starts and be like, oh, like this is fun. Like Murashita, like his stuff's kind of like weird and it like blends together. Where Curry's like very much like trying to separate everything and is like trying to use velo and trying to mix and match. So yeah, I really like Curry in terms of like how he mixes and matches, but I don't think the fastball is like anything special. I don't think like really like the curveball is like great. The cutter's okay. Like his bread and butter is just like he throws a lot of changeups and he throws it with like two or three different grips. I think I've noticed this just like charting games is just like he'll like offset the seams orientation like a little bit different on
mm,
certain changeups, and he'll get like depth on some, and then some games he'll just like scrap it for four starts and he'll like throw something else. I also think his pitch grips are like very similar to Masahiro Tanaka,
yeah,
which is like I think you sent me like something where it was like, oh, like he's looked at Tanaka before and been like, I kind of want to model my game after him. But I don't know how great Curry was last year, and it was kind of a down year, but like the changeup is really, really good. The fastball is and like everything else is just like trying to get to that changeup and trying to like throw that changeup as much as possible. And I just like the like way he goes about it because like I think he knows my fastball's not good. I
yeah.
gotta get to this changeup somehow, and I just like the way he like works the zone and like he works mix, he works his he works his pitch mix and stuff like that. Outside of that, I guess we'll bounce from Curry to another guy that I just adore because of like the way he commands the ball. And this isn't like old man yelling at clouds like I need the day of old or whatever. Like I just like the way Teiki Kato like pitches.
Yeah.
Like it's not for everyone. My coworker Mark hates watching Kato pitch. He's like, I will not do a Kato chart. I can't do it. He doesn't throw hard enough for me. Like I can't watch this. Where I watch him throw and I'm like, everything is just like painted. Like he's just like, and even if he doesn't paint it, like he misses in the right spot. Like he just gets the job done. And he's probably like I've said it before, like he's the most fascinating pitcher in MPB. Like because the results shouldn't be what they are, but like his cutter is like good and everything else is like like it's just like everything else is pretty bad in terms of like stuff. But he's an ultimate command guy. Like he just commands the zone and commands the plate in terms of like misses. I don't think he's like an 80 grade command guy like Sugano or like a 70 grade guy like Sugano or Yamamoto. I don't think he has like that type of command. I think it's more like his misses are just good. Like he just understands how to miss, and he's benefiting from the dead ball and stuff like that. But I really like watching him pitch. Like, and we're talking about like zoning a slider. Like he can zone a slider. Like that's for sure. Like 40% CSW rate on his slider. Like he has no problem zoning a slider as much as possible. So yeah, I like watching Kato pitch, and Curry's like going back to like what I said about Alan Yeager, like the ultimate like infinite changeup guy, like
Yeah.
infinity, like just throw it as much as possible. Is I think those two guys are really really unique. But there's a lot of interesting guys in MPB. You know, Uesawa is coming back. Like he didn't look good a couple of days ago. Carter Stewart Jr. is like a guy who like rips curveballs and
Yep.
and throws the ball really hard. but the command is not there. The control isn't really there, but like he's been taking steps forward as a pitcher. Andre Jackson, like you were saying earlier, like he kind of throws it like a little bit more velo. He moves the ball around. Like I really like watching different guys in MPB like succeed because I think a lot different than MLB. I think in MPB, like there's just different ways to get more results than there is in like a league like MLB where
Yep.
you kind of have to be a certain mold. In MPB, you can get results doing a bunch of different things. And you mentioned Dakota, like I mean, just throw a palm ball and just like get guys
Yeah.
to swing at it. Like I don't know, like that's what he does. Like he just gets out. So yeah,
Yeah, I think Kato is like the ultimate outlier because you can live in MPB throwing 88, 89, but Kato's throwing 85. And I mean,
yeah.
I know like the four seam's not
And
like
he's
when it gets
touching 85. He's not
yeah,
sitting
yeah,
85. Like
exactly.
he's touching it.
And it's like, when it gets hit, but he still has a 34% CSW on the four seam throwing 85. Like, how is that possible? And you look at Bono's model, and it's just like, yeah, the location plus no one else is like this. It's deep red across the board. So I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
it's
it's a
a
true
deep red
command
location.
specialist. It's just keeping guys off balance.
But I don't think it's
Um,
like glove. I don't think it's like Maddox,
yeah,
like I don't think it's Sugano, like let's hit the glove. I think it's like, let's just throw
yeah,
this ball in like a really good spot and like
yes, I
let's just
I,
get
I
out.
agree. I think it's kind of like in the Azuma territory of just he misses the damage zones. Like I mean, because he throws at Escon Field, bit more of home run prone. He can give up the long ball, but it's much harder to slug off him than he has any business doing, considering how slow he throws. One other guy I'll shout out before we wrap up here is Kojiro Yoshimura for Yakult. I think right now, at least until Yuto Nakamura takes that mantle from him, I think he's the ace of that staff. And he looked really good at the start of last season. I know he, kind of tailed off in the second half, but it's a good fastball. He's like 92, 93 on it. I really like the split finger. And he has like a bunch of other offerings. Like he's tinkering and he's trying to figure out what works for him from start to start. But I think he has good command, and I just think Yoshimura. He's a bit more of a older guy for a guy who hasn't been in the league that much because he came out of corporate ball. But I think he's
Mm,
like still figuring things out. And from what I've seen in short flashes of him, like I said, first half of last year plus when he was pitching in the Asia Pro Baseball Championship a couple years ago. I like him a lot. So I think the Swallows, as bad as their pitching staff is, if Nakamura breaks out and then they have Yoshimura plus Keiji Takahashi there, I think they can actually be not half bad for 2025.
yeah, and I do think their lineup, I mean, it's very heavy on Murakami being really, really good,
Yep.
but we have seen Murakami like put it together and like have monster years. And so yeah, I just think it's about getting enough production out of their starting lineup. I do find it funny on my list. I don't really have a Yakult pitcher that I
Yeah.
like chart. I just don't. But when I watch them every now and then, I'm like, these guys get outs, like they can do enough, and I do hope that some of them take a step forward. So yeah, like I said, there's just a lot of like guys in MPB who do different things, and that's really cool to see because it's not like the same thing over and over again. Like we're trying to execute this pitch in this spot. There's a lot of different like variety in terms of what you can see in MPB in terms of a starter.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, with the Swallows, they're kind of in the similar camp to Rakuten, whereas I mean Rakuten had
Mm-hmm.
Hayakawa pop off, but it's just like they don't have the pitching depth anywhere near what a lot of these other teams do, like
Yeah.
Oryx, Nippon Ham, SoftBank, Seibu. A lot of these teams have like multiple pitchers inside like my top 25, and then it's
Right.
like Yakult's like one guy barely sneaks into like the top 35-ish. So it's just like um, you know, unfortunate, but I think they're working on it. I mean, the Swallows they have the great misfortune, at least their pitchers do, of the park factors at Meiji Jingu Stadium are just
Oh yeah,
insane. I mean, it's like
it's crazy.
the home run rate there is almost twice as high as any other stadium in MPB. So it's
And,
crazy.
and that's what made Murakami's season like so funny was because yeah, he had a lot of homers at home, but like he was also just as good on the road. And
Yes,
it
exactly.
was like, yeah, it was just
He
funny to
was
like
not
see
like a
him.
home merchant by any means. Like he was hitting
Yeah.
everywhere. And yeah, we'll see what he does here in his final season before he goes to MLB. I actually had a dream the other day that he had 59 homers this year. I don't think that's going to happen with the dead balls, but
Hey, let's
I just
dream it into
manifested it.
existence.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
manifest it.
like the home run he hit at Tokyo Dome a couple days ago. Um, it was back there. It was like
I think I
450.
quote tweeted you and said like Siri, show me power and aura. Like
Yeah,
that's what
it's like
Murakami is.
look,
It's
I
like
know he struck out in like his other four at bats, but he did like when he gets a hold of one, it's like, man, very few guys in the world look as good as him.
yeah, I'll go ahead and say it, like his power is Stanton
Yep.
Judge level of power. Like Ohtani, like he hits the ball a long way. It's gonna be the hit tool. Like the hit
Yep.
tool is gonna be what does him in or helps him succeed. But he's still a good player. Like everyone's been talking him down. He's still a really really good player, and he's like ultra productive. Like his
Yep.
WRC pluses are just like insanely high. And yeah, he's such a good MPB
Yeah.
player. I'm excited for this last season. For
I
honestly,
think people just need to adjust their expectations because it's like, the 230 WRC plus from
yeah.
2022. It's like that's a probably an outlier season.
So he was like Barry Bonds, like Sadahura O, like
Yeah.
level of like brilliance, and people are
Yeah,
like, "Oh, we
and
need that every year."
I think there will be an adjustment period in MLB. I do think the whiffs are a big issue, but at the end of the day, it's like he's still an incredible talent. He just, don't expect like superstar 50 homers in MLB. It's just like, take it easy on him, give him a time to adjust to the league. I think he can hit fastballs. I just think that he hasn't his timing's been off.
Same, same. I'll probably do a deep dive in him at some point, but I think his mechanics and like the way he loads throws him off and stuff like that. But I do think in terms of like comping him to guys, I think his ceiling is like Matt Olson,
Yes,
and like, but if he becomes like a Kyle Schwarber type player or like a
still good.
Muncy type player, like that's really good. Like that's
Yeah.
that's what you want. But I think like his ceiling is like he could be Matt Olson. He could hit 40 bombs,
Yeah,
45
and
bombs in
and
MLB.
I
I mean
definitely want to.
MLB. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see him at first base. I don't want to see him at third base down the line.
I mean,
But
yeah, I don't think. I mean, you've seen our DRS numbers. Like, they
yeah,
just we don't
it's
love him like
it's
at all.
minus yeah minus 30.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's tough. But even if he DHs, like if he hits, like he's gonna be Schwarber. Like if he hits 40 bombs
Yep.
from the DH spot, whatever. Like that's fine. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting to end the conversation with our favorite hitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Definitely.
starters are awesome, man. Like I'm glad I got to do this with you because the ranking anything in terms of ranking stuff is just incredibly hard. So hat tip to you for putting a ranking
Yeah,
out
I
because it's
appreciate
good
that, and
every
yeah,
year.
your insights are always phenomenal. They're very, extremely difficult to find this kind of in-depth analysis of MPB in general, but especially in English, obviously. So I really appreciate you doing this with me, and I hope to continue to do this with you throughout the regular season. But please plug where people can find you, and anything else you want to say as we wrap up.
Yeah, I'll plug my Twitter. I'm over at Blue Sky too. I think it's B2 at Blue Sky if people want to follow me. I don't really use Blue Sky as much right now. That might change in the upcoming months. But right now on Twitter, I'm Brandon at Brandon and then two Wheats. So my last name TEW and then EETS two Wheats. And then you can follow at SIS_baseball as well. And yeah, we put out a lot of stuff in terms of MPB stuff. So yeah, give us a follow and check that stuff out.
I appreciate the kitty
Yeah,
cameo.
my cat's in
He
the
wanted
picture too. He
wants
wanted
to
to be
talk
in.
about yeah, he wants to talk about MPB, so that's good to see. But yeah, that is the end of our discussion today. Really productive as always. And yeah, we'll see how a lot of these starters do in 2025. Make sure to follow me at Yaku Cosmo. Make sure to follow Japan Ball as well. I'll be posting a lot more for them in the coming months. But yeah, that just about does it for today. See you guys next time.